All right, so this video is going to demonstrate how to control the CV voices on the Lyra-8 with a CV source. Control, you're not really going to control it, you're going to kind of direct it, tame it, but let's talk about what we have going on here. First of all, the Lyra-8 is not a typical subtractive synthesizer. So you are not going to be able to have volt per octave. You're not going to be able to play this like you would if you just had an oscillator. Even though it has 8 voices, these are not 8 oscillators. Vlad is clear. He calls them generators, so we're going to call them tone generators. And basically each tone generator is using an analog component of a digital chip to give us a triangle wave, which we can see on our oscilloscope. If we trigger one of the notes, we can see we've got a triangle wave here. So we're going to simplify this. We're going to take away all the weird stuff of the Lyra-8 as much as possible so that we can actually see what we're controlling and what's being affected. So we have drive all the way down. We have delay, mix all the way off, LFO's off. All of these modulation switches are in the neutral position so that none of the voices are modulating other voices. They're in a kind of a tree, if you're not familiar with the Lyra-8. So the 8 voices are in pairs, and then they're also in sets of 4. And this hold knob opens the gate based on the trigger speed switch at the bottom. So if it is fast, then it will only trigger when the hold is about at 2 o'clock. And if it is slow, it'll trigger at about noon. And it decays slower as well. So we can also just trigger them manually. And we're going to isolate to one voice right now. We're going to use voice number 5 here, and we're going to use our hold button. Any metallic object will do. We have modulation all the way down. We have sharpness all the way down. Now you see we have a nice triangle wave right now, because that's what the sharp knob does, is it merges between a triangle and a pulse or a square wave. So we can see how that brightens it up. We're just going to stick to the triangle right now. And we have our CV control coming from the Arturia, the KeyStep Pro, going into the CV voice. We do not have gate on right now. We're going to talk about gate in a second. The CV voices. So here's what happens for most people is they get their voice going and they plug the CV in. And we see that nothing is happening. First thing, this has to be switched down. Down to be modulated by CV. Now as you'll see on the analyzer, as I'm pressing keys, the harmonics are changing, but my fundamental frequency is not. I'm not changing the pitch. Again, these are modulation sources, so we are not changing the tuning of the oscillator, of the tone generator rather, because it's not an oscillator. We are changing the mod depth. So if your mod is all the way down, you're going to have very little impact. So here's what we do. Turn this up. Now we can see that our key presses, our CV that we're sending into the voices is having an impact. And if you put it at noon, this is when it's going to make maybe the most sense it possibly can. So you'll notice at the extent of my range when I'm at the default center octave, I have no sound at all because it's still, as you can tell on our analyzer, it's generating tone, but it's very quiet and it's way below what we could possibly hear. So if we step down, in this case where it's tuned, let's pitch it to noon. Just put it right around noon. And you'll see you start getting tone right around here. So let's drop an octave on the KeyStep Pro. There we go. Now the other thing that you can tell immediately, the notes are going opposite of what you would normally expect on a chromatic keyboard. So instead of the pitch going up, as we go up on the keyboard, the pitch is going down. Because again, this is modulation depth. We are not controlling the pitch of an oscillator, nor is it 1 volt per octave. But we can still get some some melodic tones out of it, which means you can use a sequencer. So, choose our KeyStep Pro. Okay, so there you have how to control the CV voices on the Lyra-8 with an external CV source. So the next thing we're going to talk about is gate. Let's go back to as little randomness as we can here. Let's turn our drive and our delays back down from where we were playing with them. And now we're going to plug CV gate out from the KeyStep Pro into the hold gate in on the Lyra-8. Now what the hold gate does is it overrides these speed triggers. And it overrides the knob. The knob now sets the amount that the CV gate signal will affect the hold. So we can still trigger by themselves, but you'll notice that the hold knob now no longer does anything unless we have a key pressed. And now it works the same as triggering manually. So if you were to use a slow trigger gate, if you were to use a slow gate, you have that slow decay, even though this one was still triggered fast, and you can kill it like that. If you go all the way up, you're gonna get some weird pulsing. It seems to work best right around 2 o'clock, and it can control all 8 voices. Now you might be able to hear we're still controlling pitch with CV, but you can't quite tell amidst all of these voices. So again, if we put these in a neutral position, which Vlad calls the electric organ, we're now not sending CV pitch information to this, we're just doing the gate. So it doesn't matter what key we press, but we still can modify if we want to by switching the modulation down again. Mod is all the way down, so we're not impacting anything right now unless we turn it up. And let's give it a friend. And we can make some of these triggers slow so they're a little more drony and get a little something on the go with our little sequence we had on the KeyStep Pro. And so there you have it. There is controlling gate over CV and controlling voice over CV.